Good Lord. I did all that with no sound. Okay, I'll go back through it. Let's do this all over again. I have sound now. I can tell I do because my little thingy is moving and I should have been watching for it all along, but I wasn't. It has been a very rough couple of days here. Yesterday I had problems getting my blades off of my mower. A lot of issues with my mower, and I've had issues with my mower for a number of days, and finally yesterday I decided it was the day to fix the mower at all cost. Well, I went past 1 o'clock and I canceled the reveals for yesterday afternoon and decided I would get them done in the evening. Well, I got the mower finished, and then we had thunderstorms. Thunderstorms rolled through, and lightning zapped my printer and my internet and my cable TV. Well, my cable TV is still on the fritz. My printer is still on the fritz. In fact, I'm not going to be able to use this printer again. I have ordered a new printer, and my new printer was a expensive printer. I have it coming, but it will be here probably 5 to 7 days from now. So what I'm having to do with the reveals I do have in the interim is handwrite all of the name cards that go on the back for you guys. Hope you don't mind my handwritten name cards for the time being, but until I get a printer back, that's all I can do. I'm going to be limping along using my wife's printer downstairs on a network connection so that I can do the packing slips and the postage to send all of your items to you from the auctions. However, we have one minor major issue, which is the nickel proof pull that I have coming up tomorrow. The nickel proof pull was supposed to be this evening. The reveals were supposed to be yesterday evening. Everything has been forwarded by one day. But with the nickel proof pull tomorrow, there is no way I will be able to do the nickel proof pull unless I get an authorization from my audience to use handwritten flip inserts, handwritten everything pretty much. I don't have any way of printing anything right now in color. My color printer is not talking to my computer, and I think it's the I/O on the input-output on the printer itself, being that it's toasted because of a brownout we had last night during a lightning storm. And basically I'm left without a printer at all, so I can't print the little labels that I put in the center of the poker chips for the new people who participate, and I cannot print flip inserts. This is one that I printed prior to this event, just so you can see what I'm talking about. These flip inserts just like this I can no longer print, and in fact my cameras are giving me issues. Well, that's really just kind of weird. There. So the only way that I will be able to do flip inserts for tomorrow's proof pull show is if I were to do them more or less like this. Let's see. How about a 1977S? That would be about the best way I'd be able to do them. Are you guys okay with that? If that is the case, then I can spend the day tomorrow working on finishing up the flip inserts for the coins that I need to do, get them all mixed into the box and get them ready for the broadcast tomorrow evening. If that's okay with everyone, let's do a vote. Yes or no? Handwritten flip inserts, yes or no? Give me a vote and let me know if it's okay to use the handwritten ones or if I need to go with printed ones like this. And man, I cannot believe this camera is messed up too. Great. Awesome. Everything I've got has more or less been fried because of the lightning yesterday. Okay. Coins and Ghouls says yes. Carl says yes. Kelly says yes. Malcolm says yes. Stanley says yes. That's 5 out of 5 so far. There's Crispy with 6 out of 6. You know, 6 out of 6 people participating say yes. I didn't think it would be a really big deal. Parvis says yes. I'm still working on the overall cost of the whole thing. I have no idea how much all this is going to end up costing me. It looks like my my Dynalight's going too. I had no idea it was messed up until just now. So we will do what we can do. Mark, my printer is gone, and I had a very expensive printer. I am replacing that printer, but it's going to take me up to 6 days to get the replacement. I cannot print flip inserts like this during the interim. I cannot print these. What I have to do is something more like this, a handwritten insert. And I'm asking if it's okay with everyone involved if I could just do handwritten inserts for the proof coins for the pool, and I'll do the pool tomorrow. If so, if not, we're going to have to postpone until after I get a new printer. Zureg says sure. I think everyone's going to be okay with it. Kimberly says fine. Techstar says fine. New Marshall says yes. Zureg says yes. And no, my thumb isn't shaking. That happens to be the problem I was having with this camera, which I don't exactly know. It gets kind of weird and freaks out on me. See? I don't know what causes it to freak out like that, but it looks like anything that's dark and linear at the bottom. It's just weird. Alright, so I will go ahead and handwrite a bunch of flip inserts and take care of this in the morning and get these done. I had a stack of nickels I was working on at the time. My printer took a fritz. I had a big stack of nickels that I was working on, and they have no inserts. And it's because I have a file I was getting ready to print, and I can no longer print it. Alright, so let's move on with this reveal. 1952 plane. Scarce. Very difficult to find in MS65 and above. In fact, 66 and 67 graded 1952 Lincoln Cents are very valuable. That is not reflected in the 1952D or 1952S issues. 1952S is a more expensive one simply because of low mintage. 1952 plane did not have low mintage, they had low quality control. So if we run into some icky in the middle of all this, well, that's just because that's what 1952 is. I wanted to do this roll because I opened the cap and looked at the top coin and thought, wow, that is a pretty nice looking 1952 on the top there. So I'm assuming the rest of the roll is going to be pretty nice. I have not opened it, have not looked at it. I got this roll a couple of weeks ago, and best I can tell, these are nice coins. I want to share them with you. That's why I ran this particular reveal. So, with all further ado, let's get started on my handwritten name cards for this reveal. Mike is first. Mike gets coin number 1, and this is coin number 1 once I can get it dropped into focus here. Pretty decent looking coin overall, I think. There is a single double die that we will be looking for. The double die is a double die obverse that shows mostly in the word trust. In the motto, it is DDO number 1. They are very scarce, very difficult to find. We don't know of any double die reverses, but I'm not really sure anyone has bothered to look, because 1952 Philadelphia is such a very difficult issue to find. This one, however, has nothing on it, so we're going to move on. There's coin number 1 out of the way. We'll be doing the nickel pool tomorrow. Everything has been forwarded by at least 1 day simply because of the problems that I've had with my equipment, including my lawnmower, which I do have fixed. Here's Penny Hoarder. Penny Hoarder, coin number 2. Nice looking 1952 Lincoln Cent. This one has a bit of a woody on it. Very nice, sharp looking coin. There is any chance we could possibly discover something new. 1952 is not highly looked at, simply because they are very expensive for what they are. And I don't think a lot of people have really spent a lot of time looking at them. So we're going to check all these coins. There could be something worth looking for in here. Missed what was being said with your dogs barking? I can always repeat anything you'd like for me to repeat. My printer left me. It went to heaven, which is kind of expected given that the printer was purchased in 2008. And I have been limping along with it for years. It had belonged to the company that I worked for. They wanted to trash it in 2015. I took it from them in 2015. I did not immediately use it, but it did get used eventually. And since 2008, it has had probably a good 5 or 6 good years of use, at least, constant use. So it's probably about time to say goodbye to it. I have done replacement toner, I've done replacement drums, replacement transfer kit, maintenance kits, waste toner bottle kits. I've done all kinds of things on this to keep it running through these years. And last night, we had a nice electric storm that really put my dog in a tizzy. But we had a lightning strike that was unusually close to the house. And I think that is what made my printer go on the fritz, and my cable box is also on the fritz. So I can't receive TV up here. No television and no printer. Television, not a problem. I don't care about that. The printer, big problem. I use my printer in almost every aspect of my job, to include making flip inserts, making the little cards that go in our flip inserts to tell who gets what coin, which is why you see Stephen A's name in handwriting, because I could not print those. I handwrote them. I can't do a lot of handwriting stuff because it takes more time than actually doing the action itself. But on these little cards, no problem. Man, this would be so nice if we had a double die with this. Look how nice the die state is on that. That's a very nice looking coin. These 52 planes are actually coming out pretty decent. I mean, very decent. We're looking at 64, 65 level coins here, which is not wholly usual for 1952 Philadelphia. DDR, maybe we will find. What I am looking for, this is. Let's keep going. Kelly Ray is up next. Kelly Ray. I'm going to get my camera issue resolved sometime real soon too, so we'll be able to use regular cameras and see everything that's going on again. For now, I am limping along just trying to keep things moving. I came back all energized and ready to get back to work and do things that need to be done to get more work done and get you guys more coins available, more shows. Wow, look at that double die clash up there. You can see the C in cent. You can see it twice. There it is right there. Awesome. That's pretty cool looking. Yeah, these are quite nice. These are woodies instead of the typical webbing. And the webbing is created by the planchet wash and how the planchets were washed prior to them being struck into coins. And planchets usually just come out with all kinds of little brown lines all over them. Here we go with coin number 7 now. Coin number 7 is going to be Eric's. We haven't found the big double die obverse yet, but we could. Well, I've been through 7 coins so far. Not a whole lot of die pairs used on 57 or 52 plane. 52 plane is just one of those. It's one of those issues that's kind of an enigma. kind of something you're not going to see all the time. Go dig through your dealer's boxes at the coin shows. You'll find that 52 plain is often skipped in uncirculated condition. That's one that's skipped. 49S is commonly skipped. 46S is commonly skipped. These are all uncirculated rolls that are difficult to find. And expensive when you do. Carl. Leader die state here. That little ridge line that comes just inside the rim and runs all the way around and kind of interferes with the lettering. That is the sign of die wear. You can also see a lot of die wear. When you look at the outside edge of the 2, in this image here, the outside edge of the 2 versus the outside edge of the 1. Outside edge of the 1 is closer to the center of the design, thus it doesn't show die wear quite as well as the edge of the 2 does, which is closer to the rim. You can see all those lines running out from the 2. That's a late die state for you right there. Certain other areas, especially toward the center of the design, will exhibit die wear. Like this right here, this little pool right here. All this area right here is showing a lot of die wear simply because that is just opposite the backside of Lincoln's head. The backside of Lincoln's head makes a lot of die wear on this side because of design transference. Also right here where you can see the area that's affected by the back of the shoulder on the other side. But the areas where there is just field, like right in here, not so bad, right? Another area that's very commonly affected is this part of the E right here. This is where the bow tie is on the other side. Will I need to edit the title of this video? What is the title of this video? Did I do this wrong? Did I use the wrong one? Let me see. Yeah, I think I did. I will need to edit the title of the video. I'm sorry. I do not know how that happened, but I will definitely change the title of the video. Alright, we'll move on from this coin. That one belongs to Carl. It's a nice coin, but it doesn't have anything on it that we're looking for. Here's coin number 9 now for Crispy. Coin number 9 for Crispy is this coin right here. A lot of woody lines going on here. Nice woody. Frank would like this. Frank is real big into woodies. He likes the woodies. And especially in these dates where you're not going to see the coins very often, much less woodies. Got nothing here. Now, Mr. Crispy, coin number 10. We may or may not get to the next video in time. But we're going to run all 3 of these. Bam, bam, bam. Get to one, then the next, then the next. Let's see what we have here on the reverse. Our next one's going to be, actually our next 2 are going to run relatively quickly because we know those years much better than the 1952 plain. It's going to be the 1955S and the 1961D. 55S and 61D are both not known for double die reverses, so we'll go for the reverse on the first 10 coins, and then we'll stop flipping them over after number 10 and only look at what's on the obverse for the varieties that we are expecting or hoping to find. I'll make sure that those titles are correct too. I don't know what happened to the title on this one. I'm not sure how that happened. I see that doubled forehead there. It's a very common thing for 1952 Lincoln cents from all the mints, and I'm not really sure what causes it, but because this is an earlier die-state coin, it's nice and strong, really easy to see. I wouldn't be too surprised if one or two of these coins in here could grade a 66, which is a slightly more valuable coin simply because 52 is very, very difficult to find in higher grade. Next one up, coin number 13, goes to Crispy. Would you quit it? Thank you. Like it very much. Let's see here. I don't think it's re-engraving of the die. That happened on the hubs in the 30s and early 40s to re-accentuate the edge of the bust. That's not what happened on these coins. These coins actually look doubled on the front of the forehead, but they're not a hub doubling. The only answer that I can come up with for what they could be is actually doubled at the point where the die was created. And what that to me means is that there was a bounce of some sort in the adjustment on the reduction lathe that actually caused that issue. You can see it on any 52 die to a certain degree. You can see it. It's there. It's just really hard to see on this one. And if we move on and keep looking at other coins, you'll see it much more obviously on some other ones than this one. Some of these much more typical for 1952, but there's some of these that are atypically nice. This is one of the better ones. See that doubling? That doubling is not hub doubling. It's not re-engraving. This almost has to be something that was caused during the process of making the die, but you can see that there's doubling all the way out to the end of the nose, but there's no doubling on the eyelid. There's no doubling on the front of the hair. It just exists in a certain part of the obverse, and you keep going down, you can see it on the chin, on the lip, but there's none when you go down to the vest or on the back of the head. There's just none. It's only on the forehead and the nose, down to partially on the lips, but mostly the forehead. And it only happens on 1952. 51, 52, 53 it could happen, but 52 is where it's really common. You see it on almost every 1952 cent regardless of mint. A few little spots on a lot of these. You're back and you feel like you've missed something. You can't leave, Tim. No bathroom breaks during a reveal. It's against the rules. I was just talking about how the doubling on the front of the forehead on 1952 cents is there on just about all 1952s, and it's not a hub doubling thing. It's not machine doubling. I'm thinking it has to be doubling created during the reduction of the design. You can see it again right there. It's not very strong. It's pretty weak on this one, but you can see it right there on the front of the forehead. The black spots on the coins that you do see black spots on are actually carbon flecks. They're little tiny bits of moisture that were trapped inside the roll when the roll was stored, that eventually the carbon from that water or whatever it was turned into a black spot on the coin and started eating into the surface of the coin. Those do affect the grade of the coin. Any 1952 plain Lincoln cent that does not have carbon and does not have the planchet wash issue is a nice and relatively scarce coin indeed. This one looks like it's going to be a very nice one. All those things that look like scratches out there in the field, they're scratches on the die, not on the coin. This is actually a very nice coin for 1952. There's a couple of little tiny flex spots. Those will not be counted against a grade for a 65, possibly a 66. It could keep them out. But this is a very high quality coin right here for 1952. Oh yeah, I'm sure anybody could miss a lot with me in a pretty short period of time. I have a tendency to talk too fast. I have a tendency to get through subjects too fast because I'm trying to keep people entertained who are already educated in the area that I'm talking about. May need a reminder once in a while, but not necessarily education every single time. And then the ones who are beginners, they tend to get the education, but they tend to miss certain parts of it. I'm trying to teach myself how to slow down and get the right speed out of things, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. My brain works a lot faster than my mouth does. Hello, Akram. Have not found anything yet in this roll. I don't necessarily expect to find anything in this roll, but having a nice uncirculated 1952 Lincoln cent is a big deal. Something looks like it's out in front of the bow tie right there. No doubling anywhere else. I'm not going to count that as anything because bow tie is not a place where you generally look for the first signs of doubling. I just saw an extra little shadow out there in front of the bow tie. That line going straight up from the bow tie, that is part of a clash. That's a die clash. Well, I appreciate that, Master of Sense. There's a lot of information out there. Everyone absorbs different kinds of information, different amounts of information, and at different times. So there's probably a lot many of you out there know one little tidbit or another that you know more than I do about the subject, but then there's going to be tidbits that I know that's more than you do about the subject, and the way we work together is to teach each other as we go along, and I fully believe in that. I think that's really the only way that we can thoroughly enjoy the whole process of collecting, is to learn from those who know more than us, or learn from those who have found out something we don't know. It doesn't necessarily mean they know more. They just know something we don't. And anyone who knows something about this stuff that I don't know, I'm glad to listen to them. Always glad to absorb more information when I can get it. For those who might have shown after the full explanation, the cards that you're seeing over here are handwritten because my printer is broken. My printer decided to take a dump yesterday during a thunderstorm, and I think lightning got a hold of it. And my dyno camera is not working as it should. My cable box is also fried. Oh, this was an end. This was a roll ender at one point in time. These came out of a tube. They had been in paper. So this was the end of the roll when it was in paper. Parvez, the thing about what we are discussing is that there is a difference in terminology that is very important to know when you're doing this sort of thing. And the reason it's important to know is because all of the knowledge authors, all of the people out there who have professed to have some specialty within coins are going to either do die varieties or errors. Generally, not both. There's Ant2242. What I do and what I look for, what I write about, and what I teach is in die varieties, not errors. Error coins are things such as, like this double die clash here. That's an error, or not really an error, but it's something that people would collect as an error. It's an oddity coin, something that's different from what you would normally expect. Clipped planchets, broad struck, struck on the wrong metal, underweight, overweight coins, double struck coins, flip over double struck, struck through wire. All those are error coins to a certain degree. Now, those are errors. Those are where you would go to someone who knows errors and talk to them about what they know, about what they have, or about what they can teach you. I do die varieties. Die varieties are almost exclusively doubled dies and mint mark varieties. Things on mint marks like doubling, styles of mint marks, different types of mint marks, large date coins, small date coins. Those are varieties and die varieties. And that is pretty much exclusively what I do. Transition designs, things like that. Things that are not errors that are actually created by the machinery of making the coins. Rather, they were created by the hand of man, because man had to have some part of the process of creating these things incorrectly as they were. And the tools are where the problem is, and those tools were supposed to have been examined prior to being used to mint coins. So if a die worker made a die and that die had doubling on it, that mint worker was supposed to notice that doubling on the die and retire the die before it was ever used for making coins. The ones that slipped through and actually made coins are very scarce. Not many of them exist. Well, we do that with different levels of strength, and we've gone to a point where we actually collect ones that have very mild strength, very mild doubling, but we still call them double dies because they are created by the same thing as the major ones. Now, people who collect errors, and I'm glad they do, I don't have anything against people collecting errors. The only thing I have something against is me collecting them myself. The reason for it is because I am slightly autistic, and my autism keeps me from being able to collect something for which there is not any kind of defined set. Nobody knows if there was, for instance, a 20% off center at K9 on a 1946 S Lincoln cent until one is found. So you can't consider that part of your set if you don't have it, because you don't know if there is even one for you to have. Where it comes to die varieties such as double dies, repunch mint marks, things like that, usually those are created in the hundreds, if not thousands, or hundreds of thousands, or even millions sometimes. And they are in varying degrees of ease in finding, yet they are all photographed, known, or some other way published that we can find an example of one and know what we have because of the markers that are left on the coin. Those are things that we can definitely put a finger on exactly what it is, exactly what caused it, exactly how common they are. That's the kind of thing that an autistic person goes after, are things that are very well defined. And so that's what I do. Things that are very well defined, very easy to figure out what a set is, because a set is known and published in various guides and references. Just like your regular date and mint mark set of Lincoln cents, that can be collected and that can be had for somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 for a set that's in pretty decent shape. But what do you do then? After you've spent your $5,000 and you have your complete set, what are you going to do? You move on to something else? Well, not necessarily in all cases. I chose to move on to the die varieties of the Lincoln cent, which turns a 300 coin set into a 3,000 coin set very quickly. And then if you do different stages and die states on those, you could be talking about 9,000 to 12,000 coins before you have a finished set very easily. You get to that kind of number, and that's a lifetime chore. That's not a set you're going to finish over the weekend. Any amount of money could have a full set of Lincolns. Any amount of money could have a full set of Morgans. But there is no amount of money that's going to make scarce dies show up for sale that you don't have to make collecting a set of Lincolns with all die varieties included easy to do at all. So that's where I am. That's what I'm professing my knowledge in doing die varieties of the Lincoln cent and understanding things that are created during the minting process, especially when it comes to specific things on the die that transfer over to the coins. I've become quite astute in that area. However, when it comes to planchet flaws and flaws that are created because of the striking process itself, I must admit that my knowledge is rather limited in those areas. I do know a little bit about them, but I do not follow the market in them, have no idea what they're worth, and don't even pretend to. So when you ask about a book that will give you all errors to look for, I really don't think there is such a thing. Simply because errors can fall into any one of 300 or 400 different categories. When you talk about off-center in different directions, you talk about different kinds of clips and what position those clips are in. When you're off-center in 10%, 20%, 30%, like that, when you get that in-depth in errors, there could be a very large number of things to look for. And you could be the very first person to ever find a 30% off-center 2000 Lincoln cent with a wide AM that's off-center 30% at K9. So you're never going to find a book that's going to tell you, look for that. Never. It's not going to happen. You'll find a book that will loosely discuss the idea of what an off-center coin is. And then it's up to you to identify what you find. And the idea that you're going to look for something specific, that specific, and find it is like finding unicorns. You're just not, it's not going to happen unless you get really, really lucky. The idea of finding a 1952 double die obverse number 1 on a Lincoln cent is not common, but it's also not undone. I've done it. I found 5 of them in one roll. So they are findable. They are out there. But finding them is not going to be easy. It'll be a chore, but not a near impossibility like some of the easy, common types of errors based on a specific denomination, date, mint mark, things like that. So as for errors, the best error book out there that I know of was written by Mr. Fred Weinberg and Arnold Margolis. It is the Encyclopedia of Error Coins. There are a lot of errors listed in there, error types and rarities and things like that that will help you a lot in understanding errors. I've had dinner with both of those gentlemen. Very knowledgeable in coins, very good in coins. Unfortunately, Mr. Margolis is no longer with us, but Fred is. And I have always found that book to be very useful when discussing errors. Some of these coins do have great wood on them. And the wood that Eric is referring to are the colored streaks running across the coins. You can see them here running basically from a northwest to a southeast. And these streaks on the coin are actually different kinds of metal, impurities in the metal or an impurity in the mixture of the metal that creates the copper piece that becomes a coin. They run it out into long strips and coils, and then they go through what's called a blanking press, like a cookie cutter. It cuts out the little rounds. Then they run through another machine that actually turns the rim up on the edges, called an upset mill. And then they go into a bin where they're eventually fed through the machine to be minted into coins. Well, when these are cut out, they're cut out of a long strip. Then they roll around in all different kinds of directions and whatnot to be minted into coins. And if a person were to so choose, they could collect an entire set of 1952 Lincoln cents with a wood grain effect running in every different direction of the clock. For instance, You could do that possibly out of this roll, or maybe 2 or 3 other rolls like it, and eventually you'd be able to complete a set like that. Maybe. You may never find one that runs straight across at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and if you don't, then your set's busted. You can't make it. It's like this one is a 1 o'clock version. So everything points up to the 1 o'clock and down to the 8 o'clock, or 7 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 7 o'clock. There's a little tiny bit of a planchet flaw right there on the rim. There's a little die crack running across the shoulder, and then there's a double die clash showing up just behind the bottom of the head. That's actually the bottom of the C of scent. Lots of interesting things can be found. Good morning, Spiked Head Die Crack, or good evening, sir. Good morning if you are in Australia. Yeah, one for Marshall. So based on what I have seen during this show and the questions I have asked and have been answered, I will be doing a handwritten flip insert version of the proof pull, the nickel proof pull for tomorrow. And that nickel proof pull will include both typed and handwritten flip inserts, as my printer is broken and I am not up to par on the number of flip inserts I will need for the show. I went through a large issue with a John Deere riding mower that is now fixed. And then we had thunderstorms, which knocked out my internet, my printer, and my cable. And only my cable is still out, other than my printer. My printer is shot. My printer is done. I ordered a new printer a couple of hours ago, and I am in deep pain because of the price tag that it took to get a printer that's going to suffice. I basically just got the newer up version on the printer I already have, which has gone way down in price over the years, but it's still very expensive. It's not quite 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there soon enough. Right? What is that, 5 hours? 5 hours up from the east coast of the United States. That same die again. See a die crack running across the shoulder. You got the double die clash. All the same issues. So those issues, if you want to call them an error, they are die errors because it's something that happened to the die during the creation of coins. So die scratches, die clashes, little breaks, chips, cuds, other things like that are die errors, over polishing errors. Like the 1937 D three-legged buffalo is a die error because it is a die polishing issue. So then you have striking errors. Striking errors are caused by the actual process of striking the coins. So it's not something that's on the die, it's something that's created on the coin by the striking process. So that would be double struck, flip over double struck, any chance of a uniface struck, a broad struck coin, a fold over double struck, all kinds of weird different things that can happen. Finned rims, understruck, struck through stuff. Anything that involves striking the coin. Then you have your planchet errors. Planchet errors are things such as broken planchet, centered planchet, wrong metal planchet, wrong thickness, underweight, overweight. These are all things that can be caused during the planchet making creation or planchet making process that have actually nothing to do with the actual striking process of the coins. So the planchet gets in to the feed to make coins, and you end up with coins that have issues, oddities, that are created by the planchet itself. So you've got die errors, you've got planchet errors, and you've got striking errors. None of those are varieties. None of those are counted as varieties or die varieties. Varieties are intended changes in a coin's design that will carry over within one issue, such as 1960, small date, large date, 1970S, small date, large date, 1946S, there are 3 different design styles on the mint marks, 1858, large letters, small letters, flying eagles, even a variety being the changeover from the copper nickel to the bronze in 1864, and then the addition of the L mint mark for Longacre. So you have 3 different types for 1864, and these are all considered varieties of the 1864 Indian Head Cent. So those are varieties, not die varieties. Die varieties are specifically doubling of any form caused by the creation process of dies, or placing mint marks or date digits into dies that are already finished. Prior to the 1900s, all of the different dies were partially dated when they were created, and then the date process was finished by hand. So you would get in 1882, you would get a die that had an 18 on it, and then you would have to punch the 82 in there to make it an 1882 die. Well, sometimes these date digits were doubled or moved over or punched in the wrong place initially, and that would create what we know as a repunched date. Repunched dates ended with the punching of dates. As soon as the entire date was hubbed into the coins, that killed the whole repunched date idea. And in that, it also would kill the overdate idea, because an overdate is one date punched over another date. So the overdates that you might refer to, the 1918 over 17 D nickels, the 1918 over 17 S quarters, the 1942 over 41 dimes, the long disputed 1958 over 7 Lincoln cents, which don't really exist, but those would all be considered doubled dies. They're doubled dies, they're design hub doubled dies, where one design was used and then another design, namely designs with 2 different dates on them. They are not overdates. They're not overdates because the date was not punched into the die. The date was hubbed into the die with the rest of the design. It was merely hubbed into a die with 2 different hubs having 2 different dates. Pretty simple, but very controversial, simply because so many people have been miseducated that the 1918 over 17 D Buffalo nickel is an overdate. It is not an overdate. It is not technically an overdate. It is a doubled die. It's a doubled die. It was a die that was hubbed with a 1918 hub and a 1917 hub. Now, I find myself repeating this particular lesson a number of times over and over, and it always seems that I've not repeated it quite enough, because there are people who still think we will say, incorrect way about these. It's all part of the die making process. It's all how the dies were made, what created the dies, and how these terms were initially defined. I'm not making this up. This isn't my definition of what these are. This is a definition that has been taught for decades by the authoritative figures in coins, and I simply picked this stuff up from reading books and from talking to the people who preceded me in knowledge of these different anomalies on the coins. People like Alan Herbert, Lonesome John. Let's say Gene Nichols. Yeah, I've got a number of names kind of in my head. Hello, number one Thug Stecken. As soon as I get finished with this, I will be able to move on to the second roll for the evening. The second roll for the evening is going to be that 1955 S roll. That one might be a little more entertaining than this one's turning out to be. I've got a pretty nice looking roll here. Most of the coins are in pretty decent shape, but there are no die varieties here that we have seen because we're up to the last two coins in the roll and have found nothing so far. This is an original roll. So the idea that we could find a die variety in the last two coins of the roll is going to be a near impossibility. But near impossibility does not mean we don't look. Near impossibility just means we don't expect. I would not go through a roll of 1969S without looking at every coin. Now, see, Alan wasn't that big of an RPM collector. Alan was more of an overall collector of a lot of different things. A lot of tokens. He did a lot of different coins of different styles, but one of his major things was in education. He was always really big on educating people about coins. I'm looking for something specific here. Just give me a minute. That markup by the T I've seen on a number of other coins, so I just want to see specifically what that is. Get the best angle to look at it. We're on the last coin in the roll, so I have a little bit of time to deal with this. Okay. That, to me, is not a double die. Just kind of looking to be sure. I don't want to leave any stone unturned here. I was looking at this little area over here. It looked like it might have been the bottom of a T, but I don't see anything. Videos captions available. Video caption, closed captioning? I'm not sure what you're asking. Parviz, if you will contact me through email and teach me what I'm doing, I'd be glad to make any adjustments I can to make the videos more helpful to everyone here. I definitely don't want videos that are not helpful to people simply because why would I make them in the first place? So how do you make captions available? All right, well, this is the final coin in this roll. This one goes to Malcolm. We ended up with 50 nice looking 1952 Lincoln cents that do not have any die varieties. So we're kind of left with a good roll that's not a good roll, if you understand what I'm saying. It's a good roll, but it's not a good die variety roll. And we wouldn't necessarily expect it to be a good die variety roll, but you know, whatever we can get, right? Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to back out of here and go ahead and start prepping myself for the next video. Next video is going to be reveal number 441, and it will be a 1955S Lincoln cent roll. I'm going to back out now. It is 8 o'clock on the dot in Eastern Time Zone. I'm going to back out now and come back in about 6 minutes. I'll see you then.